Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. So everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We have a great attorney, Ammar Alo, an immigration attorney in Toledo, Ohio, on the call today. And I'm going to interview him about his experience where he got started in immigration law. And he actually had a travel ban waiver approved. So that's what I was really excited to talk about, how that happened, what he submitted, where it was, all those kind of details that every practitioner is just clamoring for because there's no guidance on how these things are actually happening. Success rates, and the State Department in general has just been quiet on it. So, Ammar, thank you so much for being on the line. I want you to start telling us about, where you're from, where you grew up, and then follow that into how you got involved into immigration law.
All right. Well, first of all, John, thanks for having me on. Pleasure is all mine. Enjoy doing these kinds of discussions with other attorneys, especially. And now it'll be, I normally do like more general talks, but this one is going to be detailed since I think your audience is mostly attorneys, so that's going to be pretty awesome. So let's see, I got started in 2008. I got licensed in 2008 here in the state of Ohio, and immigration just kind of fell into my lap. A lot of people around me were asking for it, and I just started learning more about it. And, with mentors, I got to be, one of the busiest immigration attorneys here in our area. So, I've been doing it for almost 10 years now, and it's really exciting, and yet every day there's something new. So it keeps us on our toes.
And so, what kind of practice areas do you focus on with immigration? Did you do are you full scope, or do you limit to certain areas?
I'm limited to family immigration and affirmative asylum cases. I don't do any defensive work, and I don't do any business work.
Interesting. And what made you just choose those areas and get into those?
Honestly, that's what I saw the need for, and that's what most people are asking for. When you have businesses, they tend to deal with firms that they're already established with, I think. And if a firm is handling your other corporate or business needs, and they also have an immigration lawyer who there can do their immigration work, they probably will just go with them. And so, being here in my market, it's a small market for business immigration. So I don't know if there's a lot of the pie that I can get into. So my focus is just business. I'm sorry, not business. My focus is family, where there's a lot of it around here. And also I do a lot of asylum work for people from all over the country, actually. Most of my asylum clients are not in my area, and actually a lot of them I've never seen in person. Obviously, I've consulted with and talked with over the phone, but haven't sat down and seen them in person.
Interesting. Is there a country that you do a lot of asylum work from, or is it just spread out all types?
I'd say the majority of it is Syrian. And I have a lot of background on the issues that are happening in Syria. My parents immigrated from Syria back in the 70s. So I know a lot about what's going on there, but I've also done cases for other Middle Eastern individuals. And I think that's it. I don't think I've done anybody outside the Middle East. I haven't had a case for somebody outside.
Have you been having interviews recently with under Attorney General change and Trump and all that kind of stuff? Have you had any interviews happen recently? And have you seen them the interviews happening faster under the new guidance? And secondly, have you seen them become more strict or more difficult?
Well, from my recent experience, since the new guidelines, I filed, I'm going to say 3 asylum applications, and the earliest one that I did file actually got her interview in less than 45 days.
Wow.
She chose to go by herself,
Mm-hmm.
but from what I understood, it was a pretty smooth interview. Now, you have to know, here in the Midwest, most of the cases go to Chicago, whereas you guys are out in California. I think you have 2 asylum offices in California.
I know there's
Um,
Anaheim, but I'm not sure what the other one is. But
I think isn't there one in there might be one in San Francisco. We should
probably,
probably
yeah.
look
I
into
think
that.
so. Yeah, there's 2 offices. Yeah.
Whereas here, like Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, all the Midwestern states, they all go to Chicago.
Cool. So,
Um,
yeah, that's exciting. I mean, it's exciting and not exciting that they're happening so fast. Uh, in some sense, it was the kind of a tactic to just linger on here when they were taking longer to get the interviews. But back when I used to do asylum cases, my clients would get frustrated because they just wanted the interview to happen so they could either get it approved or denied. They just wanted to move on with their lives and not be stuck in that limbo. So that's helpful as well. But again, there's this like huge backlog that is just still pending with asylum cases, and it's such a mess. So
and I think
yeah,
because of the new guidelines, the people that were waiting from before are now going to be waiting even more
yeah. So they're
longer.
stuck. Yeah.
So they're going to be even more frustrated. And I got call after the new guidelines came in. I got calls left and right about people, from people who were just really frustrated with it, saying, "Well, now I have to wait even longer." I'm like, "Yeah, sorry. I mean, I got nothing to do with it. Talk to President Trump."
And that's the thing, like I get calls from people randomly who like, and I don't do asylum cases, but they'll call and say my attorney sucks. Like they're like, we've been waiting for the years and no interview. Like we want to change. I'm like, I don't know if the attorney sucks or not. I haven't seen your application and whether how well it's done, but the wait is not something we have control over, and that's probably one of the biggest things people get frustrated about. They think it's our fault, the random waits. And even aside from asylum, like when you're looking at I-130s taking longer and all that kind of stuff, consular
Hmm.
processing, all that, administrative processing. I really try to my initial consultations to not give him hopeful stuff about how fast things are, to be as negative as possible, so they're prepared that USCIS is not a quick moving institution for the most part.
Yeah, we have to manage client expectations a lot more now than what we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to tell them, look, this is going to take longer than what you think it is. And then on the flip side, I've looked at USCIS processing times on their website, for example, and where they tell you like an adjustment of status, it takes between, I don't know, 6 and 24 months. I've had some come back with green cards in less than 3 months. Based on an
Yeah.
I-130. So it's just, I mean, it's so inconsistent that it hurt. I think our clients are just as frustrated as we
Yeah.
are, because I can't tell a client, this is really what it's going to take. This is how long it's going to take. Now we're just like, hey, this is what we've seen in the past few months. We don't know what
Mm-hmm.
is going to happen in the next few months. So,
Yeah, I had a NATS
that's,
case and a marriage adjustment case that were done in 3 months in January this year, and I thought there was like going to be some red flag that it happened that fast. Like it was crazy. So timelines are completely meaningless. And one of the main question people always ask me, other than what the price is how long it takes. And then I'm like, listen, I don't have an answer. I have to like explain that for 5-10 minutes to explain how their estimates, how reality works, and it may work, it may not. And at the end of the day, there are no timelines. Like just it is what it is. Like I try to explain that because some other attorney's just going to give some, because I've had calls where they say, oh, the attorney told me it takes 3 months. I'm like, well, maybe it takes 2 years. Who knows?
yep,
So
no one knows.
I have like an
Like,
interview coming up for a marriage adjustment case. Client had a green card, got citizenship, then did marriage and all this stuff. For some reason, even though we sent the naturalization certificate, all this stuff, they put the petitioner as an LPR, and they were waiting on the visa bulletin. And I kept calling him every 45 days or 60 days and mailing them saying they're a U.S. citizen. It's a immediate relative case. It should be. It took a year and a half now that they finally set up the interview, and they finally accepted that it was a U.S. citizen petitioner. Uh, there's no reason for them not to believe it. I sent naturalization certificate, I sent the passport, I called them, told them, send requests. So like for no reason, this something that should have been done months ago. It's just about to have an interview. So it's just the
well,
randomness of the game.
I mean, here's one for you. I just got done submitting civil documents to the National Visa Center for a Algerian case, immediate relative visa, and the National Visa Center sends me an email saying, "Thank you, we received everything, but make sure that we're going to schedule the interview, but make sure that the applicant at the interview takes with him the 2017 tax returns and the W-2 for the co-sponsor." And I looked back at the package that I sent, and I was 100% sure that I sent that stuff. And lo and behold, it's there. I sent it because I scan everything that I send, and it's there. I sent the 2017 tax returns and the W-2s. Why are they asking for it again? And it's just things like that that really frustrate you with these different agencies. It's like, come on, man. I mean, why? It makes my client think that I did not do my job correctly, when clearly I did, and here's a scan of it that I sent it in. And so now you have to tell the clients, like, listen, the National Visa Center is not exactly the best at, keeping track of what was sent in and what was not sent in.
Yeah, it's just so frustrating because it causes delays, especially the RFU for stuff you sent. It's just like, why are you doing this? Or they don't accept civil documents when it's exactly what the State Department wants, and you have to just say, no, it is correct. Like, read this stuff, and that could add like 6 weeks or 8 months or 2 months to a process, and it's like people are waiting. Like one thing I've been thinking about recently, I really want to talk with the immigration attorneys about is when you do it. For marriage cases, immediate relatives, other than immediate relatives that are parents, they should get away from the rule where there's immigrant intent if they come in with a tourist visa. So let's say you're a U.S. citizen married to a foreign person and your spouse wants to come live in the U.S. I don't think they should be going through constant processing because, imagine you're living abroad, like in Germany with your spouse and you're a U.S. citizen with your foreign spouse, and then you get a job offer in the U.S. and you need to move to the U.S. Is it fair to like have the foreign spouse wait? Technically, what they're supposed to do is wait for constant processing to do that, or enter the United States and potentially be accused of immigrant intent of all this kind of stuff. There should be even statutorily an exception for children and spouses because it's just a due hardship on families to have to wait through the constant processing process for that. I'm not sure I jumped. That's been on my mind a lot the last couple weeks. So I really think we should push that because like these delays that are happening, it really kind of break apart families. The reason why I had this issue popped up is I had a family friend whose wife was studying in Canada, and he's here in the U.S. And wife's the LPR, he's a U.S. citizen, but because of schooling, she constantly comes and goes. And then he actually ended up, because she got a job as a doctor in Canada, he moved to Canada and is living there. And I was thinking, if you just move with intent like that to the U.S., potentially they could get you for immigrant intent, maybe not. I'm like, I'm not sure about Canadian laws, but it seems like it's more flexible. We should have that sort of flexibility too when it comes to spousal stuff, when situations fast moving, that they should make it more flexible to allow them to do that. But sorry, went on a tangent.
I agree. It is very frustrating. I mean, I always argue in my cover letters or in my memos to USCIS, especially in these waiver cases, now to the embassies and the State Departments, that listen, the intent behind U.S. immigration law is, a big part of it is for family reunification.
That's the number one thing in the INA is family reunification first and foremost.
And what's happening now is these families are getting torn apart, whether, if you're affected by the travel ban or if you're not. I mean, even when you're not affected by the travel ban, it still takes months and months to get these things done. I mean, one of the biggest crimes that I see of our immigration law is when a U.S. child over the age of 21 petitions for their parents, but they also have minor siblings. That these parents now come in with LPR status, but now their minor siblings are still stuck back wherever they were, without any way to come in. Now, once the parents become LPRs, they can then apply for the minor siblings, but still, I mean, that's another 2-year wait. And so now you have an LPR who has to go back and forth between two countries.
And then they may call into question domicile because your kid's there and you're coming back and forth, and every time they enter at the border, they're worried about CBP. Or along that line, let's say a person the spouse decides to wait to do consular processing and they have an I-130 pending. All immigration lawyers are always afraid when you enter at the airport just to visit your spouse for the holidays while you're waiting. are they going to give him expedited removal or voluntary withdrawal because they're like, oh, you have intent? We're like, no, I'm just visiting. I'm always tell clients not to do that, but I've never had a problem where I-130 pending spouse came here. But it's the conservative answer every immigration lawyer always gives is don't enter the U.S. if you have an I-130 pending because they might hit you with expedited removal or voluntary withdrawal, and that shouldn't even be a worry. Like it's just like again, family reunification. This stuff it doesn't make any sense in practicality. Maybe if they make another category that says like instead of immediate relative of a parent of U.S. citizen, they could be like parent with children, so it could be another preference category or something. One thing I do is if a U.S. citizen is filing for like the mother and father, and then they have minor brother siblings, I just apply for like the father for green card, then have the father do LPR spouse F2A category, so the child comes in under that. That way, like both the parents don't have to keep coming back and forth and paying for the airplane tickets and all that kind of stuff until the child's
do them one at a time.
yeah, and so that's what I'm doing in cases, but I'm doing this with Iranian cases, but now the travel ban hit them, and it's just like, oh my God, it's just one thing after another. So you handle Syrian cases. The Syrians have to do administrative processing like Iranians do. Do they get hit by that long wait time?
Well, prior to the travel ban, no,
Wow.
it wasn't happening. But now with the travel ban, I mean, we don't. Do you really know what they're classifying it under? Is it under travel ban review, or is it under administrative processing?
Now it's like both, but before the travel ban, I've had cases take a year of administrative processing. That's just 212 something, whatever that image B or G or something like that. Not BB is for immigrant, but now it's just like a merger of the two. Because like for like the example you have, which is great, and I want you to talk about it right now about getting a waiver approved from Syria. From Iranian cases, because they go to Yemen and Turkey and the UAE, they just don't accept the package for a waiver. The only times I've seen waivers approved from there that I've heard of, and I ask everybody as much as I can to see who's had success, is a couple of cases for tourist visas when it was a foreign relative visiting the United States to give like bone marrow for cancer or like that kind of extreme kind of stuff. And it was only approved after the client went to the press and made a big deal about it in the newspapers. So that's why, like, for Iranian cases, people call me wanting to do waivers. I'm like, I don't think there's a point because they're not going to accept it. And potentially, if you email it to them, I've emailed them and they get annoyed. They're like, "Stop! Don't email us this. We're not going to review it." This kind of bad attitude about it, saying we make the decision for an application, not you. But for Yemen and Syria, I've heard practitioners on these listservs say they've gotten approved. So could you walk me through your success in this matter and what the client's background was, which embassy and stuff?
Well, the little background about the client. The client was an LPR. He got married and filed for his spouse a couple years ago. And then, I don't know, bad luck or whatever, the travel ban passes, or it was passed, I guess, or was whatever, it was put into effect in December of 2017, I believe. And her interview was in January of 2018, like right at the end of January. I think actually the travel ban came into effect. It was like was it 26th of January? I can't remember.
It was okay for a relative, so it would have been okay. And then like one of the courts said, I think Supreme Court, I think November or December, somewhere around that time, they're like, oh, that exception for close relatives is gone too. I think it was either November or December 2017.
Yeah, so I mean, it was right after the travel ban, and so we put together a waiver package and we emailed it to the embassy in Amman.
Okay, so it was in Amman, Jordan. What did you include in the waiver packet? Was it intense, like a I-601 waiver, or how deep was it?
It was a unique waiver, honestly. So what we did was we had a little bit of background about him, the LPR, and that talking about what he does as where he's working and what he does for a living, and showing that he's an excellent employee. Actually, had like letters of recommendation from his employer. And then we also talked about the severe challenges that are happening right now inside of Syria, and why it would be dangerous for the spouse to remain in Syria, especially being now that she's married to a U.S. citizen, or not a U.S. citizen,
U.S. person,
a U.S. person. And then we talked about her, how she was an upstanding citizen in her in her home country. We got letters of recommendation or character letters from her friends and colleagues in school, and we also got letters written by some relatives. Now she was a little unique. She had some relatives here in the United States who had already had green cards.
Hmm.
So we got some letters from them as well.
Did you get into country
And
conditions and stuff, or is that just a given?
I mean, it's a given that if your country is part of the travel ban, that the country conditions are not very good.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and that's really isn't that really the whole idea behind? I mean, their justification for the travel ban that
Yeah.
these countries cannot give us information about their citizens, and therefore we cannot take their word for it that
The
they have no
untrustworthy
criminal records.
regimes. Yeah.
Yeah, so you do talk, that we did talk a little bit about Syria, but just in passing, that it's in terrible condition right now. And lastly, I think so. You hit first of all you establish the bona fide relationship, and then you establish that she's not a threat to the United States,
Hmm.
and then lastly you establish that in fact it will be of the national benefit of the United States that she is issued a visa. And for that, I mean, we use the argument that you know reuniting an LPR family is in the national interest of the United States,
Hmm.
and family unity is in the national interest of the United States. So we also, touched on what she would be doing here when she came here. She'd go out and find a job, and I don't know, like I think she was a kindergarten teacher or something, and she would go out and find a kindergarten to work in, and she would give back to the United States.
Interesting. And
Um,
she had to go to Amman, Jordan. Is there any restrictions on a Syrian entering Jordan because of the situation, or did she have to get a visa? How did that work?
so anybody going to the U.S. Embassy in Amman, Jordan from Syria, first of all, you can't fly out of Syria. You got to go to Beirut to
Hmm.
fly. So that's, you got to cross the country lines into Lebanon and fly from Lebanon. Second of all, you're not allowed into Jordan as a Syrian. They're not letting Syrians just come in. So if the only way you can come in if you have an interview is if you send a special email to a special email address that the State Department gives you, giving them your flight number and the date of your flight, and they will then send, I guess, notice to the Jordanian officials that this person is coming in. Please let them through
Oh man, they have to rely on the
the airport.
bureaucracy to do that in time.
Initially it wasn't very good. We had some people turned back at like after they've landed in Jordan, they
Oh
were
man,
sent back. But from what I hear recently, it's been pretty smooth. Not too many people have had problems
that's
with
good.
this process. Yeah, so it's pretty good now,
Interesting.
and I
And
hope it
so,
stays that way.
so they went to the interview. Did they ask a lot of questions, or was it just this basic interview?
It was really a basic interview. From what the client told me is, I can't remember. I think he went to Jordan with her. Like he flew from here and went to Jordan.
Was he able to enter the embassy with her in the interview, or did she go alone?
Uh, I know they both went into the embassy, but I think he had to stay like in the waiting room
Okay,
somewhere.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Um, but basically, they looked first of all, they saw that there was a bona fide relationship. There was, we sent enough evidence for
Hmm.
that, and then she gave them the printed out uh, waiver packet that we had prepared, even though we had already emailed it. But I always tell them, take it with you.
Hmm.
They took out a couple of papers from it, and then they went back and they came out with that one paper that they give everybody that says it has the checkbox checked off that says we can't give you a visa right now because of the presidential proclamation being considered for a waiver. But they were really nice to her, and they said, look, we believe your marriage, everything looks good, but we can't issue you a visa because of the travel ban, basically. Um, you'll hear back from us in about 4 months. And they actually gave her a timeline, which was weird because normally they don't give timelines. So lo and behold, 4 months later, my client had moved to Turkey to be with his wife a couple months earlier, and in May. So he moved like in like March or whatever. And they were living together in Turkey, and then they sent him an email saying, "Hey, send us your passport." So he sent her passport over. They printed the visa on it, and they sent it back, and then they came.
Wonderful. And any issues at border CBP, or is that just the usual?
No, just the usual. It's very smooth, actually, and it says on the visa, if you read it, it says Presidential Proclamation waived.
Wow.
So, I mean, they were really happy. I was really happy. That was my
happy
first
ending,
waiver case. Yeah. But I had somebody a couple months later interview in Amman, Jordan again. Same thing, another Syrian. We did a waiver packet. He's a U.S. citizen, though. The petitioner is a U.S. citizen. And we still don't have anything.
Yeah.
And then I had a few more done in the last couple of months. I think between July and August, and obviously we don't have any of those back yet. So the waits are getting longer, it seems. And I've dealt with the Amman embassy for a waiver. I've dealt with the Beirut embassy for a waiver, and I've dealt with the embassy in Kuwait. And Beirut was the one that kind of, it seemed like they weren't very comfortable taking the waiver packet. As I would send it to them. They said the consular officer will determine whether she's eligible for a waiver. I'm like, I understand. Here's just some information, to help the consular officer make a decision. But I don't know to what extent they want us to send stuff to them. That was the embassy in Beirut.
Yeah, I emailed the embassy in Abu Dhabi. I said, listen, like, could you make like an official statement on your website that what we should do, what we should not do? Because and they're like, oh, it's already up, and we tell the clients at the interview. I'm like, well, first of all, you don't, but whatever. I'm like, just give some guidance what you want, what you don't want, because of the amount of inconsistency. But I think they don't really know exactly what's going on either, because they make these proclamations up, or the president does, on a whim, and then just sends it out. Because when the travel ban was first made, I think CBP, I felt bad for them. They're at the airports with no guidance, and they're like, just interpret this vague document. The first one that was written like it was a drunk that wrote it. It made no sense. It's so, especially when it's family members. Oh, I mean, especially in other cases, I have colleagues who had EB-5 cases where people invested a bunch of money, waited for years for the interview, they got denied. There's people who are sibling cases that are waiting for like 14 years, and then they go and get denied. That's really harsh, because they can't just resubmit like a marriage case and at least give it a year or two. But to wait 14 years and get denied, and that's why it's kind of like, just push back the interview or don't submit the MVC documents. I have a case right now of a child of a U.S. citizen or something waiting all these years, and we're just holding at the MVC phase because I'm like, I don't want to risk going to interview and getting a denial. You can't wait another 7 years for this to go down. So and they're getting really frustrated and worried.
That was kind of our strategy in the beginning too. It's like, let's just wait and see what happens with this travel ban, or at least let's wait until things get cleared up and there's like an actual procedure for this, applying for waivers. But till now, there isn't. Like, it's every embassy kind of. It seems like, I mean, we don't really know because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. But it seems like every embassy is just kind of interpreting it the way they want and making up the procedure they want. And we as practitioners, okay, well, we never only deal with one embassy; we deal with many embassies.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, can we just adopt some kind of uniform procedure for doing this? That'll make our lives easier, and then we can actually explain things to our clients. It's like, this is how it's going to happen. But now it's like, now it's like, okay, client, before we even do a waiver, let's email the embassy and ask them, how do you guys want this?
Yeah, for real.
I think that's going to be my strategy going, from now on, is just like, let's email the embassy. Let's find out how they want this.
Yeah, like if for immigration lawyers, one of the like gifts or dreams I have is if there's some sort of consistency in embassy procedures. For example, E2 visas are notorious. Every embassy has its own treaty trader like requirement and how they want files to be sent and how big the package could be and what they don't want. Or I had this issue where it was an immigrant visa, parent of U.S. citizen from Iraq. And I don't do Iraqi cases too often. So we submit everything to NBC, interview is coming up, and then one neat thing they've done is they have like a checklist breakdown for each embassy on the State Department's website of what they require. And I noticed that Iraq requires all the birth certificates of the beneficiary. Most embassies don't require that. Iraq is one of them that requires like the beneficiary to submit birth certificates of their other children, even if they're not part of the application. And so it was like a month before the interview, I'm reading this, like, oh no, we got to get these original birth certificates and the children are all over the world now. They're like 40, 50 years old. Like, I'm like, oh, you got to get your birth certificates of the father to get this proved because like every embassy I deal with never has this requirement. So it didn't hit me until I read that. Now it's like always start by going to the embassy page and seeing what the requirements are so you know beforehand. And as you said, email them is like, what is your waiver procedure? Because it's inconsistent. Hopefully they'll give you some sort of response either way.
Yeah, so maybe they'll say, we're not accepting anything that you send, so don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it takes a lot of time too. And like, the case that I had pending when this happened, I haven't charged the clients doing the waivers and just because I just emailed the government, even though like they said tell me not to. I'm like, because like Iranian cases, there's satellite television where these lawyers come and say, you have to submit it. You have to submit. If your lawyer doesn't, they're being a bad lawyer. So I keep getting the calls. I'm like, okay, I'll do this extra work. No charge. It was in the contract. But like new people, I'm like, if you want it, it's going to take a couple hours for me to prep this and send it and go back and forth with them. There's an extra fee. But at the same time, like, are you going to pay extra and take more time for no reason? Like if they're not going to accept it. So it's a weird area of lack of guidance on what to do. It's so frustrating.
It is really frustrating. It's just unpredictable, and it makes our jobs harder.
Yeah.
Honestly, and it doesn't put our clients at a good position either because there's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
If it was just look, there's a travel ban, you're not allowed to get a visa. Period. That would be one thing. Just tell clients don't apply right now. You know what? There's a travel ban.
Yeah.
You can't come in. That saves them money. That saves them frustration. That saves them, from having all this false hope. But now we're like, oh yeah, there is a waiver, but we can't tell you how long it's going to take, and also, we're not going to tell you what documents to send, and there's no real procedure on how to do it. So now you're like stuck. You're like, okay, well, what do we tell clients?
Yeah, bro. And like with Iran, like they say you can do student visas, but at the same time, they might hit admin processing. They might just deny it anyway. So it's like, you enroll in school, pay application fees, maybe like pay for enrollment to a certain extent, and then all of a sudden you get denied or it takes a year. It's just like, why you make life so difficult? But let's move on to some more happier stuff. So why don't you tell me about the firm? So you structure that you have, you're a solo practice, is that correct?
Yeah.
I think you're like me. You do everything yourself as well.
Basically.
Yeah, I think it's the way to go. I love it. Every once in a while I look into getting assistance, but I'm like, I have to teach that person what to do, then make sure they don't lose the information and they're doing it right. And it's just like so much easier to do it. I'm not trying to do like crazy high volume kind of law firm, so I don't lose track of things, do it all myself. But so you handle most of the case yourself, and you've registered in Ohio. You're a corporation, is that correct for your law firm?
LLC, yes.
LLC. How long after starting your practice did you register your company as a corporate kind of entity?
I actually did it immediately, like after I got sworn in, but I didn't have my physical license yet. I had already I went ahead and registered it with the state of Ohio, so I did it right away.
It took me 4 years. I just did it like it was finished like 2 months in August. So what made you do it? Just because like that's what you're supposed to do? Was it incentives or what was going on that you decided to do so quickly?
I think there's probably two parts to it. One is it gives you a more I don't know, maybe it's not real, but gives you a more of a professional look that this is a registered corporation. And then obviously you have with the LLC you have the I guess protections of a limited liability company. But being somebody that just started, there's probably not going to be much liability out there. So a lot of people just practice under as a sole proprietor, and they just have their liability insurance, and they just go with that. But I think it's probably better to register as an LLC.
Yeah, I did it just recently. I mean, there's that superficial aspect, which I agree with you. Having the name corporation, it sounds more official, and I think that there's value to that. In California, I think like we're gonna be liable anyways because we're lawyers and we have some sort of fiduciary duty. But it's good to have that. Like, if someone slips and falls at your office, that's like outside of the practice of law. That could be a situation. But also, there's some tax consequences and treatments that could potentially be beneficial that are legal. So it was like, okay, now that my office was like ramping up and getting busier and more revenue coming in, it made sense for me to pull the trigger. I mean, there's additional cost to it. Just figuring out all the paperwork took me like a couple hours and do all that. So there's like that cost to it too. But yeah, officially a corporation now, for what it's worth. So he did it. So, we spoke before and you said you use specific software, and I don't having a relationship with this company or anything like that, but you use DocketWise for intake and forms.
Yep, I do, and I'm very happy with it. Shout out to DocketWise. I am not getting compensated for this at all. But yeah, I'm happy with it. And honestly, whatever software you use, at first I was like anti-software. Like, I tried a whole bunch of them. I did their free trials, and I just found them to be too cumbersome and not really. I don't know. I couldn't integrate them into my system. They all wanted, for me to put my information on their softwares and all of that, and I was already too, I guess, I was in my ways already. Like, I couldn't just move everything.
Yeah.
So along came DocketWise. I don't think I even reached out to them. I don't even know how I got a hold of these guys, but I tried it out, and it works fine. Like, you send the clients a questionnaire, and they register their email address and they fill it out, and then you submit them what's called a smart form. And there's probably other softwares that do this, but this is just, I'm speaking from this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they fill out all basically the questions that come up on the forms. And DocketWise is pretty cool, where if you click one option, it gives you a set of questions, but if you click another option, it gives you a different set of questions. So for example, you start an I-130 case, and then it says, is the beneficiary in the United States? If you click yes, then they give them adjustment questions. If they click no, then all the adjustment questions are not there anymore, and it's just consular processing questions. And I found that pretty cool. And then when you're done with it, you basically click print, and it prints them out on the PDF forms of USCIS. So I like it. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's the best software out there. I haven't tried many in a few years. But it does save a lot of time, honestly.
I have another colleague, in Los Angeles, who loves it too. I tested it out, and it's good, but it just, to go into software and send that, I was like, just keep my ways. I'm an old school lawyer. As high tech as I am, doing podcasts and stuff like that, it takes me forever to like give into technology, and it just, even as easy as it was better than the other ones. It was just hard for me to like go and adjust the forms the way I wanted. Because like the form, when you said adjustment, it asks for their like I-94 number, and usually I go to the I-94 website CBP and download myself, and like I prefer to like check this stuff myself and ask the client. But I mean, you can remove that question as well. But I was just like, it's gonna take too much time. I got too lazy about it. So, but it seems like it is technically the right thing to do, and it saves the people a lot of time and hassle, and avoids typos and stuff. So I just want to give a shout out to, because a lot of people love it. I've talked to. I don't use it myself. I'm sticking with the old school way, but I wanted to definitely talk about that as an option, because usually it's the big names that you hear about, but there's these small ones that are doing good jobs as well, good work as well.
Well, I used to be like you. I actually used to send out like a Microsoft Word document to my clients, where they would fill it out with the questionnaire. But honestly, once I got into this, the copy and paste is all gone now. I don't have to sit down for 2 hours, make copy and pasting stuff from form to form, making sure everything is correct. Now it just automatically does it for me. Obviously, you have to review everything.
Yeah.
No matter which software is doing it for you, because there's always the client could make a mistake. You could make a mistake entering something, so everything needs to be reviewed.
Interesting. So, what are your plans on your practice? Which way are you taking? So, do you plan expanding hiring, or do you like the system that you have right now?
Honestly, my view has always been if I can handle it myself, I'm gonna keep doing it
Hmm.
until I can't. But this year has gotten really busy with all the stuff going around, with Trump and the travel bans, and the changes in immigration law, and the enforcement that ICE is doing now. Last Monday I got the phone was ringing off the hook. Apparently ICE had done a couple of house calls
Oh, I've heard
in
they're
our
doing that.
area.
Yeah,
So
so messed up. Yeah.
phones were ringing. People were very scared and frustrated. So yeah, you never know. I mean, as long as, like I said, as long as I can do it, I'll probably keep doing it. But at some point, and I feel it's coming soon, um, we'll have to hire somebody here to take care of some stuff,
Hmm. That's a big step.
or
Yeah.
outsource
Yeah.
or outsource it. Like since I've outsourced, the form preparation, that's saved me a lot of time. Um, where before I would be, sitting down and, like I said, copy and pasting from my questionnaire into the forms.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you find different solutions. You can even outsource your phone calls, and different things that you can do that can save you time, but keep you as a solo practitioner. We don't
Yeah.
have to hire anybody.
I mean, one worry I have with going to be solo right now is I just, I have a baby that's I think 7 or 8 months now, 7 month, 8 year old, and like, I'm like, having a system is going to be good to hold a family over. Or, like if I get sick or something happens, the firm's going to stop because it is solo. So that's like, it's like one thing. Should I have some sort of system and associates so I can handle things? Um, at the same time, then I need to accept more cases and have more overhead. I'm like, I'm really not interested in having more overhead because I'm doing pretty good with my low overhead costs. And so like it's always internal debates and somewhat I'm like, and I've talked about previous podcasts, like maybe keep the business of the law firm as it is, but then invest in other businesses that are more passive or alternative revenue streams. So put a ceiling as to how much my law firm makes, because then if I go higher, if I grow it, then I'm gonna have to hire people and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of internal debates I'm constantly having, and so that's why my focus is kind of be like, okay, the practice will be a certain amount of my like income, but then I'm going to do alternatives like education and attorney marketing and all these kind of things I'm going to help people with in the coming months. And I've been for this whole year I've been trying to prep them up, but the practice has gotten so busy I keep pushing it back. But just to have the alternative revenue streams, because like you never know. Like luckily I'm not. I diversified my practice where Iran isn't my like so Iran used to be a majority of my case when I first started. Now it's like maybe 5 or 10%. It's a very small part of my practice, which won't affect the bottom line. But like if I was reliant on Iran or something like that, for most of my cases, the travel ban and administrative processing is a big hit. So again, like that diversification is really key. And who knows with Trump, you might just shut things down all of a sudden or slow things down, and
Yeah.
take immediate relative cases like parents of U.S. citizens out of the way, or crack down on others. So it's kind of like really unreliable. So I'm like, I need to have like alternatives methods and spend time thinking about other ways of making money and bringing in revenue for the family.
I mean, that's true. It's always good to diversify, and if something does happen to us,
Yeah.
what are you going to do if you're the breadwinner for the family?
Hmm. I mean, that's the
Um,
issue everyone has. Like every family has. Exactly, as you said. Yeah.
yeah, it is tough. It is always something that you think about. People buy disability insurance or other things like that.
Hmm.
I mean, there's ways around it. But having a stream of passive income is probably um, a good solution as well.
And there's so many people on YouTube trying to, I see these Facebook ads of like, it's so easy. I'm like, it's not easy. It's like, even passive income has to have some active participation. Money never comes easy. But my thing is I'm trying to study and figure it out. I say like the investment is just thinking and trying to find ways of doing investments or businesses that aren't, it's not in a competitive field other people don't do yet or something like that. And so, but that takes away time from my legal practice. I can market or accept more clients. So I'm kind of investing by not making less money right now in the hopes that this time I'm spending studying in the future is going to be productive and do something. That's, it's an entrepreneurial kind of aspect of taking that risk.
Well, I have one area that maybe you should avoid, or maybe it's just when they have problems they come to me. But being a landlord is, I don't know. I've seen so many issues with that, where you buy up like properties and then rent them out.
It's
I have
funny,
clients that
yeah.
just had
That's
headaches with that.
Yeah, that's been that goal. Would have been making enough money to buy real estate for the last like 10 years and to be a landlord. And then in the last couple of months, I was telling my wife, I'm like, because we rent and I don't want, and there's a whole discussion of renting versus owning. I'm like, I don't really want to own my own place I live in because when there's a problem, I want to call and someone else deal with that headache. But I'll be landlord of the
Hmm.
property and stuff. But I'm like, it's like when problems happen as a landlord, they always happen the night before Christmas, Saturday night, when you're on vacation into
Uh-huh.
Europe with your family, and it's just a headache and deal with collecting money, all that. Being a landlord sucks. It's not that passive. It requires a lot of investment and hassle. So that's not a good way either. So
Yeah.
we've really restructured what the goals are. I'm glad you said that. Being a landlord is like a big headache. Renters don't appreciate that a lot of time, how much of a headache it is.
No. Yeah, and then being a homeowner, you have to do all that stuff yourself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And if there's like a plumbing problem, also you're hit with like a huge bill of fixing plumbing stuff. I had a friend who has a
Uh-huh.
condo and like his somehow the pipes leaked underneath the building underneath him, so he had to spend like 15,000 to fix that. And then 6 months later it happened again, and the homeowner association for the condo wouldn't take care of it. So all of his savings got wiped out because of some leak that just was in another unit. But it was his fault, they considered it. And insurance didn't take care of it or whatever. And so it's like damn, like renting it saves you a lot of money. You don't have that lump sum and all the risks of prices crashing and
Yeah.
interest and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like it's how do you do it? And to a certain extent, the rich are getting richer off doing these kind of things. Maybe they hire management companies, but they have so much money they're bringing in from multiple properties that it justifies the expense of a management company. But I try to keep my hand on the pulse of what the rents are in my area. And so I always call places up when they have for rent sign. And 9 out of 10 times when it's a management company, even when it's not a management company, they don't answer the phone or return the calls. And I'm like, dude, like, how are they trying to rent these out, or are they just not paying attention? It's kind of weird. You can't rely on another person to do it either because they don't care about your property like you do. So that becomes a big hassle too.
That's true. I've seen some management companies take absurd amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
Like even just entering into a lease, they take like a big lump sum out of it, like 1 or 2 months rent.
Wow.
And then if something goes wrong and the tenant stops paying, um, they go after them for a little bit, and then they're like, "Oh, you got to go get an attorney."
Yeah.
uh, because we've sent them to collections, but hey, they're not responding. So you
And then
guys do
all
it
the
yourself
profit
now.
disappears. I mean, you could do the legal
Yep.
work yourself too, but then that becomes like a hassle because you're taking away time for your own practice, and you're not necessarily always an expert in landlord tenant law. And in California,
Yeah.
the tenants have a lot of rights. So like even if the landlord's 100% right, they'll still be out a bunch of money in many months of rent until they actually evict the person. And who knows, they're gonna trash the place before they leave and all that kind of stuff. And so it's
Yeah.
just like oh man, there's got to be easier ways to make money, but but I guess it's a good problem to have if you're trying to find alternative secondary revenue sources and you can afford it. But it's something that I'm really thinking about to diversify in that kind of way because. Trump has made a lot of business too, as I said, like, just doing the waivers potentially be additional revenue sources. But in one aspect, like the additional work is really personally offensive because you're doing all this ritual work that shouldn't be the case. Um, and on the other end, it's like you're like getting money from people that don't have it sometimes, have to spend all this money. So that's kind of hurtful too. And so it's like not good money, even though it could be additional revenue sources because of the hassles that they're creating. But on the other end, he could just shut things off too. So who knows? The immigration the executive branch has a lot of power over this. And even if they do it illegally until like someone sues and fixes it up, there could be many months of like just illegal activity in this area with regards to their rules and stuff. So it's just so
Right.
stressful
Are you
field.
saying we should start looking at other practice areas?
The thing is that maybe, but I'm not really into doing anything else other than immigration. Like that's it's such a good area of law that like when I see other people practicing like personal injury or lawsuits and they go into depositions and stuff, I'm like, oh hell no, I would never want to deal with that kind of headache. That's worse. I'd rather fight the government or this nonsense rather than fight another lawyer over pennies or millions, whoever, whatever, in a deposition. They get really nasty and stressful, so I don't really want to do that either.
Yeah, I've come to a time in my life where I just want to avoid the courtroom at all costs,
Yeah.
um, and getting in between, two fighting parties. So I try to avoid like contract disputes or any litigation whatsoever. I used to do, a few years ago, I used to do a lot more like misdemeanor cases. I've moved away from that, and I'm doing basically anything that I can do out of the office.
Hmm.
So immigration is obviously a huge part of that, but I also do a little bit of personal injury law, um, and I do a little, commercial real estate transactions.
Hmm.
Um, those are always good,
Yeah.
and you know, just business formations, lease like drawing up leases or contracts between parties, stuff like that. That you can do from the office. Actually, you can do from anywhere. You don't have to be in the office,
Yeah.
um, and you don't have to go downtown, or you don't have to go sit in the courthouse for a couple hours just to get a traffic ticket, amended to something else, and waste your whole morning or waste your whole afternoon.
Yeah, that's one of my prerequisites for my cases. That it has to be stuff I could just don't have to go somewhere. Other than marriage cases, where you have to appear for the interview sometimes, and like, it's a lot of business, and sometimes clients need to like go, but more and more just to drive and sitting in the waiting room, and then just deal with that is a hassle. But it's that part is part of the case. But for the most part, I only handle cases where it could be I can mail stuff to the government or mail stuff to people, and then just do
Yeah.
things on my own time, where it's not a deadline where the government's like you have to appear at a certain date or file this. But I mean, you still get that with RFEs and stuff and deadlines. But it's a good lifestyle practice that I really enjoy when it comes to benefits based USCIS immigration practice.
Okay. Speaking of mailing stuff, have you tried filing online N-400s?
I don't trust the online system, so I don't do that. They do email when they mail you stuff now. They said you could go on the online system and stuff. I just don't trust it. I can't bring myself to do
I
it.
don't. I did it. I'm gonna say last year I did a couple of them online. They worked out pretty good, but the last two that I've done, um, I literally just did one on Friday, and the client hasn't gotten the email yet where it says, hey, log in and check your check your application. And I don't know what to do because like you can't go back in and request it to send again,
Hmm.
and now you're just stuck with this draft online, and the client didn't get whatever it is they're supposed to get. And I sent like an inquiry to their help desk, but I haven't gotten anything yet. So I think I'm just gonna go back to
Yeah. I mean, last year they did.
doing it the old-fashioned way.
I think the ombudsman did a survey and they found the online system is not faster for USCIS employees. If anything, it takes a little bit longer. This was last year, so they're like, they haven't seen the efficiencies they thought they would with the online system. Maybe it's better now, but it's just like it's just online stuff. I'd rather have some paper that they have that's scanned and I could like I know the what's it called, the service center got it and all this kind of stuff. The problem I'm dealing with right now is I started using the credit card system for payment of fees, and I had one case returned last month where they said the credit card didn't work, and then I have another one that's going to be returned that didn't. So I'm like going back to checks because I can't rely on them to do it,
Oh,
and it's really messed up because like that same credit card the day before I sent like an I-130 with that same application. I sent another application to it was a marriage adjustment case, and the credit card worked for that one. And the next day I sent a Nats case that it worked. So the credit card worked for three other cases within a same day before, day after, but that one they didn't work. So I think the employee is just punching the numbers in wrong or something. But it's like I can't deal with that. It's unreliable if they can't punch in the numbers right. So I'm going to go back to writing checks for these cases, especially if there's a deadline or something. I do like the credit card
let
form
me.
because it's a piece of paper. It's not like a check that could fall out or something like that. But I just can't rely on
Yeah.
them to do it right.
Well, let me ask you a question. because now you're doing so when you're doing a credit card, you're taking client money, you're putting it in your IOLTA, and then do you have a credit card that you pay out of your IOLTA, or where do you transfer that money
I have
to
a
then?
separate credit card that I just use for filing fees, and then whenever filing fees are taken out, I immediately transfer from the IOLTA to that credit card.
Directly to the credit card. So you basically pay directly from the IOLTA account to the credit
Yeah.
card.
And I talk to people
Okay.
that say you're not supposed to do it like that, not this and that. I'm like, why? There's all sorts of interpretations. Some of them are opposite of what I'm saying is the proper way, or some weird ways. But it seems to me I never take control of the funds, and it's always paid to the government. And I separate the credit card from my personal credit cards just for IOLTA account for filing fees. It seems like that makes sense to me. But I think I'm just going to go back check because of the inconsistency with the Chicago lockbox in particular for marriage adjustment cases. That's where I've had problems.
Actually, that brings an interesting point. It's like, hey, if you're, I don't know, this is maybe a discussion for another time, but if you're using the credit card and then there's like, some credit cards give you like points and give you
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff.
I thought
And then,
about that. I talked about a previous podcast. Like the credit card I use is so I had some. I got a separate credit card. Didn't have points. Frankly, I just got a credit card because just to get it to help my credit and like have like a bigger thing. And so I started using that, and it happened to be one I'd realized later that doesn't have points. But I'm like, oh, that's good. I'm not. Again, there's no incentive for me to use this because there's no points. And then recently, when I incorporated, I opened up new business bank accounts for incorporation, and they're like, "Do you want to open a credit card for that?" I said, "Okay." So that way, like, because my bank is Wells Fargo, but I had like a Chase or something credit card I was using for IOTA. I'm like, well, it's easier if the payment fee is from the same bank, and I can just drag and click and makes it easier. But the credit card they gave me has points. Then I'm like, well, is that going to be a conflict or something? So now I'm like, oh, what should I do? But now that I'm gonna go to checks and stuff, I'm like, oh, it doesn't make a difference. But um, it is. It's potentially could be looked at as a conflict because you're getting a benefit from it, but at the same time, it's like you could send. It's not a benefit that would cause you to do something against the client's interest necessarily. So it's one of those weird areas with technology growing and stuff like that. It's unknown. What is the ethical thing of to do it? And so that's a big unknown right there.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear some ethics opinions on those, because I can see a lot of people doing that. Especially with I guess the mileage that you can get and things like that you can get from credit cards.
It adds
It
up. I
would be
mean, a
interesting
marriage
to
adjustment
see.
case, one
Yeah, it
thousand
adds
seven
up.
hundred sixty. Plus, you get bonuses on these credit cards if you spend a certain amount. So, I mean, if you're
Yeah,
doing a couple of marriage cases, adjustment cases a month, that's a bunch of points right there.
it is. That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And if the ethicists come back and say it's okay, then I think there's going to be a lot of lawyers jumping out and getting credit card.
Well, good stuff. How could people reach out to you? Do you have a social media account, website, email that you could share?
So yeah, my website is alolegal.com. That's ALO legal.com. There's a contact form on there that comes to me that you can, if you want to reach out to me. You could also reach out on my Facebook page. We don't do any communication through Facebook, but it will send us a notification that somebody has reached out to us, and that's facebook.com/allolegal. And those are probably the best two ways to get a hold of us. And I guess maybe just direct email,
Yeah.
info@allolegal.com.
Awesome.
So
Well,
one of those three. I mean, the most direct is the email, of
yeah.
course.
Well, Amar, thank you so much for reaching out, being a listener, and talking with me. It was very informative to see your experience with USCIS and to kind of do some release as we do immigration lawyers get together to talk about the headaches of the practice. But overall, it's really a blessed position to be in to deal with such good people in this practice, and it's strategy, it's planning, it's using your brain and doing creative stuff. So it's such a great area of practice. Just wish they wouldn't be so destructive towards people's personal lives when they don't need to. It's like it's over and above what needs to be done for a lot of these things. But thanks so much for being with me today.
Hey, my pleasure, John. Let's do it again. This was fun, and like you said, it's good to be able to release sometimes. So good talking to you, and if any of your listeners want to reach out, you know how to reach me, and let's do it again.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too, man. Take care.
Bye-bye.